Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine for no reason? The kind that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand on end? Tonight, I'm sharing true horror stories that are so real, you won't be able to sleep alone. These are stories that people lived, and some didn't survive the fear. Story 1. The Stranger in the Window. Picture this. It's late at night. The world outside is silent, save for the faint hum of a sleeping city. You're alone in your room, the lights dim, the air heavy. You're about to drift off when you feel it. A prickle on the back of your neck. A chill that isn't from the cold. The unshakable sense that something is watching you. Not from the shadows in the room, but from outside, just beyond your window. You tell yourself it's nothing, just the wind, just your imagination. But then it comes again, a tap, slow, deliberate, like something testing the glass, waiting for you to notice. Your heart skips. You glance at the window, but all you see is darkness. And yet, you know. Something is there. Something that shouldn't be. Something that sees you, even when you can't see it. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a story that will make you think twice before you look out your window at night. A story that will make you check your locks, pull your curtains tight, and maybe, just maybe, keep the lights on. This is the story of Emily Harper, a young woman who thought she could start over. But what she found in her new apartment wasn't a fresh start. It was something older, something patient, something that had been watching for a very long time. It began with a single tap, a sound so small, so ordinary, it could have been nothing. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would follow her, and maybe follow you too, if you listen closely. So turn up your headphones, dim the lights, and let's step into the darkness. This is The Stranger in the Window. Emily Harper was 24, a woman carrying a quiet strength and a past she couldn't outrun. She'd grown up in a small town, the kind where secrets festered like damp rot. Everyone knew her story. The girl who'd survived a car accident that took her older brother, James, 3 years ago. Emily had been driving that night. A rainy road, a sharp curve, a moment of distraction. The police called it an accident, but the whispers in town didn't. They blamed her neighbors, her friends, even her own mother, whose eyes grew cold after the funeral. Emily blamed herself most of all. The guilt was a shadow, always there, heavy and unyielding. The city was her escape, a chance to disappear into the noise, to become someone new, someone untainted by loss. She'd found a job at a bookstore, a place where she could lose herself in stories that weren't her own. Her new home was a third-floor apartment in the Ashwood, a crumbling brick building from the early 1900s, tucked in a forgotten corner of the city. The landlord, a gruff man named Mr. Kessler, had warned her it was old, with thin walls and creaky floors. But the rent was cheap, and Emily didn't care. It was hers a sanctuary, a place to rebuild. She spent her first days unpacking, arranging her books, her clothes, a few photos she couldn't bear to leave behind. One was of her and James, laughing at a lake the summer before the accident, his arms slung around her shoulders. She set it on a shelf, facing away from the window, as if hiding it from the world. The apartment was small, a living room with a sagging couch, a kitchenette with a flickering bulb, a bedroom with a single window overlooking a narrow alley. During the day, the city's hum car horns, distant voices felt like a lifeline, a reminder that she wasn't alone. But at night, the Ashwood transformed. The streets fell silent, and the building seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for something. On her second night, Emily fell asleep to the faint rumble of traffic. She'd left the bedroom window cracked, just an inch, to let in the cool autumn air. The city felt alive outside, a comfort she clung to. But at 2:17 a.m., she woke with a start, her heart pounding, her skin prickling with an unease she couldn't name. The room was dark, the moonlight spilling through the half-open curtains, casting jagged shadows across the floorboards. She lay still, listening, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then she heard it. A tap. Slow, deliberate, coming from the window. At first she thought it was the wind, rattling the old glass. The ashwood was full of quirks, creaks in the walls, groans in the pipes, the occasional drip from a faucet. But this wasn't random. The tapping was steady, patient, almost intentional, like someone testing the glass. The moonlight painted the room in shades of silver and shadow. As she pulled the fabric aside, she saw it, a shape, a figure standing outside her third-floor window, where no ledge or fire escape could hold a person. Its edges were blurred, as if the darkness had molded it into being. Its face, if it had one, was hidden, swallowed by shadow. But its gaze, it was like a physical weight, pressing into her, seeing every secret she'd tried to bury, every moment of guilt, every whisper of blame. Emily couldn't move. Her legs felt anchored to the floor, her voice trapped in her throat. The shadow didn't shift, didn't blink if it even had eyes. The tapping resumed, slower now, almost mocking her fear. Each tap was a pulse, syncing with her racing heart, as if the thing outside knew exactly how fast it was beating. She stumbled back, her hand fumbling for her phone on the nightstand. Her fingers shook as she dialed 911, her eyes never leaving the window. The operator's voice was calm, distant, like it belonged to a world where shadows didn't watch from impossible places. "Ma'am, is someone in your apartment? Are you safe?" Emily whispered. I I don't know." Her voice cracked as her gaze dropped to the floor. That's when she saw it. A smear of dirt streaked across the wood in front of the window, and in the dirt, scrawled in uneven, jagged letters, as if written by a trembling finger, 3 words: "I see you." Her stomach twisted. Someone or something had been inside. The door was locked, the window latched from within. She lived alone, or so she thought. The operator's voice faded into static as Emily stared at the words, her mind racing. Had she tracked in the dirt herself? Had she missed it earlier? But no, her floors were clean, obsessively so. This was new. This was deliberate. The police arrived within 10 minutes, their boots echoing in the stairwell like a distant drum. 2 officers, one young and skeptical, the other older with tired eyes, searched the alley below, the roof, the neighboring buildings. They found nothing. No footprints in the soft earth, no signs of forced entry. No one had been seen entering or leaving the Ashwood. The older officer, whose name tag read Sergeant Daniels, stared at the dirt-smeared message for a long moment. "Kids, probably," he muttered, but his hand trembled as he wrote his report. The younger officer glanced at the window, his flashlight beam shaking slightly, before urging Emily to call if anything else happened. After they left, Emily pushed her dresser against the window, closed the curtains, and sat on her couch, clutching a kitchen knife. She didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every gust of wind, felt like a message. She wasn't alone. The words "I see you" burned in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow had seen more than her face. It had seen her guilt, her pain, the pieces of herself she'd tried to leave behind. The next morning, Emily met her neighbor, Clara, a retired librarian who lived across the hall. Clara was in her late 60s, with sharp eyes and a habit of talking about the ashwood like it was a living thing. They met in the hallway, where Clara was watering a wilting plant. "This building," she said, her voice low, "it's got stories. People come and go, but some things, they stay." Emily forced a smile, not wanting to share what had happened, but Clara's gaze lingered, as if she could see the fear Emily was hiding. "Be careful with that window, dear," Clara added. "It's seen things." Emily brushed it off, telling herself it was just an old woman's eccentricity. But Clara's words stuck with her, burrowing into her thoughts like a splinter. She tried to settle into her routine, starting her job at the bookstore, where she shelved novels and rang up customers with a practiced smile. Her coworker, Sarah, a bubbly woman in her 30s, noticed Emily's exhaustion but didn't pry. "City life takes some getting used to," Sarah said one day, handing her a coffee. "You look like you haven't slept in weeks." Emily nodded, avoiding her eyes. How could she explain the tapping, the shadow, the message? But the apartment wouldn't let her forget. Small things began to change, subtle at first, like a puzzle rearranging itself. A photo of her and James, the one from the lake, was turned backward on her shelf, showing the blank side. She'd stare at it, wondering if she'd moved it in a daze, but she knew she hadn't. A glass she'd left in the sink was found on the counter, upright, as if placed with care. And then there were the scratches, faint, jagged marks on the floorboards, like something had clawed its way across the wood, too deep to be accidental. One night, Emily woke to a new sound, not tapping on the window, but inside. A slow, deliberate scrape from the living room, like a chair being dragged an inch at a time. Her heart pounded as she grabbed her phone and crept to the door. The living room was dark, the air thick, like someone had just been there. On the coffee table, her notebook where she'd been jotting down work schedules was open to a blank page, scrawled in smudged ink, in handwriting that wasn't hers. "I'm still here." Emily's scream caught in her throat. She backed into her bedroom, locking the door, though she knew it wouldn't help. She called Clara, who arrived in her nightgown, her face pale but unsurprised. "I told you," Clara whispered, glancing at the window. "The ashwood doesn't let go." Over tea, Clara told her about the building's history of fire in 1923 that killed a family on the third floor. A man in the 1930s who vanished after complaining of eyes in the dark. A woman in the 1970s who fled after finding messages scratched into her walls. "They called it the Watcher," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "No one knows what it wants, but it always watches." Emily didn't believe in ghosts. She told herself it was stress, her mind unraveling in a new city, her guilt over James playing tricks. But the tapping returned, now from the walls, the ceiling, the floor, always at 2:17 a.m., the exact time she'd woken that first night, the same time the accident had happened. She stopped sleeping, her eyes bloodshot, her hands shaking as she poured coffee at work. Sarah noticed, pressing her gently. "You okay, Emily? You look haunted." Emily forced a laugh, but the words stuck with her. Haunted. Desperate for answers, Emily started researching the ashwood. After hours, She'd stay at the bookstore, digging through old newspaper archives in the basement. She found a grainy photo from 1923, a man standing outside the building, his face blurred, his head tilted toward a third-floor window. The caption read, "Local man missing, last seen at Ashwood Apartments." Another article, from 1956, described a woman who moved out after finding scratches on her walls spelling "I see you." A 1980s tenant reported a shadow outside her window, always at 2:17 a.m., before she left without notice. Emily's hands shook as she read. The watcher wasn't new. It was patient. And it was still here. She confronted Mr. Kessler, the landlord, one rainy afternoon. He was in the basement, fixing a pipe, his face lined with years of wear. "The Ashwood's old," he said, avoiding her eyes. "Old buildings have noises, shadows. People make up stories." But when she mentioned the watcher, his wrench slipped, clanging against the pipe. "Don't go digging into things you don't understand," he muttered, and walked away. One night, Emily knocked on Clara's door, her nerves frayed to breaking. Clara hesitated before letting her in, her apartment cluttered with books and faded photos. Over tea, Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. "The watcher? It doesn't just watch, it chooses. Something about you, Emily. Something in your past, it's drawn to you." Emily froze. Her past. The accident. James's death. The guilt she'd carried for years. The voice in her head that whispered she could have saved him. Could the watcher sense that? Could it see her pain? Clara leaned closer, her eyes sharp. "I've seen it too. Years ago. Not outside, but in my dreams. A shadow, whispering my regrets. I stopped looking out my windows at night. You should too." Emily left, her mind spinning. Was the watcher real, or was she losing it? Was her guilt conjuring this nightmare, or was something truly stalking her? Emily couldn't stay. She packed her things, left the Ashwood, and moved to a new apartment across the city. A modern high-rise with bright lights and no history. She changed her phone number, cut contact with Clara, and tried to bury the nightmare. She told Sarah she was fine, just needed a change. But the watcher wasn't done. A month later, Emily got an email from an unknown address. Attached was a photo, a blurry shot of her new apartment window, taken from outside, 10 floors up. In the glass's reflection, a shadow, its edges blurred but unmistakable, scrawled at the bottom in jagged text. "I see you." Emily deleted the email, her hands shaking. But the tapping followed her. Faint, almost imperceptible, but always at 2:17 a.m. She started seeing the shadow in reflections, her bathroom mirror, her phone screen, even puddles on the street after rain. And then there were the dreams. A faceless figure, standing in her childhood home, whispering James's name, its voice low and accusing. "You let me go," it said. And Emily would wake gasping, her pillow damp with tears. She stopped going to work, stopped answering Sarah's calls. She covered her mirrors, kept the lights on, but the feeling of being watched never left. One night, she found a scratch on her new apartment's floor. Faint, but unmistakable. "I'm still here." Back at the Ashwood, new tenants moved into Emily's old apartment. They didn't last long. A local news blog reported their complaints, strange noises, scratches on the walls, a message in dirt. "I see you." Clara, still living across the hall, told a reporter, "It's the watcher. It never leaves." But Emily knew the truth. The watcher wasn't bound to the Ashwood. It was bound to her. It had seen her guilt, her pain, her secrets, and it would never let go. Some presences don't need a window to find you. Some strangers don't need a door to enter. And some eyes never stop watching. So, the next time you're alone at night, when the world is quiet and the shadows stretch long, look at your window, check your locks, ask yourself, what's watching you? Because some strangers don't stay outside. Some strangers know your secrets, and some strangers follow you forever. If you've ever felt that prickle on your neck, that chill in the air, that sense of being watched, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below. Tell us what you've seen in the dark, because the watcher might be listening, and so are we. Story 2. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Some roads are meant to be driven in daylight, when the world feels safe and the shadows stay in their place. But after dark, on certain lonely stretches, the rules change. The air grows heavy, the night presses in, and the things you meet aren't always what they seem. Have you ever driven alone at night, your headlights cutting through the darkness, and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold? A feeling that something or someone was watching you, waiting just beyond the edge of the light? Tonight, I'm going to tell you a ghost story, a true horror tale that's lingered in the whispers of drivers and the shadows of a forgotten road. This is the story of Mark Thompson, a man who thought he was doing a kind deed when he stopped for a stranger on a rainy night. But what he encountered wasn't just a hitchhiker. It was something older, something restless, something that vanished, yet never truly left. This is The Vanishing Hitchhiker, a paranormal tale that will make you think twice before picking up a stranger or driving certain roads after dark. So dim the lights, settle in, and let's take a journey down a haunted road where some passengers never reach their destination. Mark Thompson was 32, a mechanic with steady hands and a quiet life. He'd grown up in a small town on the edge of the city, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's business, but he'd always kept to himself. His days were spent under the hoods of cars, fixing engines, solving problems that made sense. But his nights were different. Mark was a man haunted by his own choices, a divorce that left him alone, a strained relationship with his teenage daughter, Lily, who lived with her mother an hour away. Driving was his escape, the one place where the world felt simple, where the hum of the engine drowned out the regrets that gnawed at him. It was late October, and the air carried the bite of approaching winter. Mark was driving home from a long shift, taking the old Route 17, a winding two-lane road that cut through dense woods on the outskirts of town. The road was notorious. Locals called it the Hollow, a place where cell signals died, and the trees seemed to lean closer at night. Mark didn't mind. He'd driven it 100 times, knew every curve, every dip. But tonight was different. A storm had rolled in, sudden and fierce, with rain pouring down in relentless sheets, hammering against his windshield. The wipers struggled to keep up, their rhythmic swipes barely clearing the blur of water and darkness. The headlights illuminated little more than the road ahead, the yellow lines fading into a void of black. The woods on either side felt alive, their branches clawing at the sky, their shadows twisting in the storm. Mark turned up the radio, trying to drown out the unease creeping into his chest. The static crackled, the music fading in and out, as if the storm was swallowing the signal. He was alone, the road empty, the world reduced to rain and shadow. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw her. A figure by the roadside, barely visible through the downpour. A young woman, soaked to the bone, standing with her thumb extended in a silent plea for a ride. Her hair clung to her face, dark and matted, and her clothes a pale dress, oddly out of place in the storm, hung heavy with water. She looked lost, frightened, undeniably human. Mark's first instinct was to keep driving. It was late. The road was dangerous, and he didn't know her. But something about her, her slumped shoulders, her desperate stance tugged at him. He thought of Lily, imagined her alone in a storm, needing help. Against his better judgment, he slowed the car, pulled onto the shoulder, and waited, his heart thudding with a mix of caution and curiosity. The woman opened the passenger door and slid into the seat without a word. The air shifted, growing colder, heavier, as if the storm had followed her inside. Mark glanced at her, but she kept her head down, her wet hair shielding her face. The silence between them was thick, broken only by the steady hum of the wipers and the roar of the rain. He cleared his throat, trying to ease the tension. "Where are you headed?" he asked, his voice louder than he meant it to be. She didn't look at him. "Pine Hollow Road," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper, yet carrying a strange weight, like it echoed from somewhere far away. Pine Hollow was deep in the woods, a dead-end street with a handful of old houses, miles from the city lights. Mark nodded, shifting the car into gear, but the unease in his chest grew. Something about her voice, her presence, felt off. As he drove, the rain seemed to thicken, the road narrowing as the trees closed in. He stole glances at her, trying to make sense of her. Her dress was thin, almost vintage, like something from decades past. Her hands rested in her lap, pale and still. Her fingers curled slightly, as if clutching something invisible. Her eyes, he caught them once. When she turned to stare out, the window were empty, distant, like they were seeing something beyond the storm, beyond the road. Mark tried to make conversation, anything to break the silence. "Bad night to be out," he said, forcing a smile. "You okay? You look cold." She didn't respond, just kept staring out the window, her breath barely fogging the glass. The unease in his chest tightened, a knot he couldn't untie. He focused on the road, the curves sharper now, the rain relentless. He told himself she was just shy, just shaken from the storm. But deep down, he knew something wasn't right. He glanced at her again, opening his mouth to ask her name. But when he turned, the passenger seat was empty. No sound, no movement, just gone. The seatbelt hung loose, the door still locked. Mark's breath caught, his hands tightening on the wheel. He slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly on the wet road. He stared at the empty seat, his mind racing. Had she slipped out? Fallen? But the door hadn't opened, and the road was empty behind him. Then he saw them wet footprints on the floor mat, leading nowhere, as if she'd melted into the air. A faint scent lingered, like damp earth and something sweeter, almost floral but wrong, like flowers left too long in a vase. Mark's heart pounded, his rational mind scrambling for answers. Maybe he'd imagined her. Maybe he was more tired than he thought. But the footprints were real, and so was the chill that settled in his bones. Mark sat frozen, the rain hammering the car, the empty seat staring back at him. He told himself to keep driving, to get home, to forget this, but the address she'd given, Pine Hollow Road, burned in his mind. Against every instinct, he pressed the gas and headed toward it, the road twisting deeper into the woods. Every shadow seemed to move, Every flicker of the headlights felt like eyes watching him from the trees. Pine Hollow Road was a narrow, gravel lane, barely visible through the storm. The house at the end was old, its paint peeling, its windows dark and sunken like hollow eyes. Mark parked, his hands trembling as he gripped the wheel. He didn't want to get out, but he needed answers. He needed to know who she was, what had happened. He stepped into the rain, the cold biting his skin, and approached the front door. He knocked, the sound swallowed by the storm. After a long moment, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman in a faded robe. Her face lined with age and something else, sorrow, maybe, or fear. Her eyes widened when she saw Mark, as if she knew why he was there. He explained what had happened. The woman, the ride, the vanishing. His voice shook as he described her dress, her empty eyes, the address she'd given. The woman listened without a word, her hands clutching the door frame. When he finished, she whispered, almost too softly to hear, "That's impossible. She died here 20 years ago on that road. A car accident, in a storm just like this one. Her name was Anna," she said, "a local girl, barely 19, who'd been hitchhiking home when a drunk driver hit her. The car had veered off Route 17 into the trees, and Anna was gone before help arrived." Mark's hands went cold, his mind reeling. He stammered a thank you and stumbled back to his car, the woman's words echoing. "She died here 20 years ago." He drove home, the rain a blur, the empty passenger seat a silent accusation. He tried to tell himself it was a trick of his mind, a hallucination born of exhaustion, but the wet footprints were still there, faint but undeniable, and the floral scent lingered, now mixed with something metallic, like blood. Weeks passed, but Mark couldn't shake the memory. The rain, the dark road, the emptiness of the seat. He started avoiding Route 17, taking longer routes home, but the encounter clung to him like damp air. Sometimes, driving at night, he'd see a fleeting figure by the roadside, a woman soaked, her thumb raised, vanishing when he slowed to look. He told his ex-wife Karen, hoping for reassurance, but she dismissed it as stress, urging him to see a therapist. He told his coworker Tom, a gruff man who'd lived in town his whole life. Tom's face darkened. "The Hollows got stories," he said. "You're not the first to see her." Mark started asking around, discreetly, not wanting to sound unhinged. Locals shared whispers about Route 17. Other drivers had seen her, a young woman, always in a pale dress, always on stormy nights. Some said she appeared to those who were lonely, those carrying guilt, as if she could sense their pain. One man, a retired trucker, claimed she'd spoken to him, her voice soft but accusing. "Why didn't you stop?" He'd quit driving after that. Mark dug deeper, visiting the town library, flipping through old newspapers. He found an article from 2003, yellowed and brittle, about Anna's accident. The photo showed a crumpled car in the woods, a pale dress caught in the wreckage. The details matched. Route 17, a stormy night, a girl who never made it home. But there were other stories, older ones. A hitchhiker in the 1980s, seen on the same road, vanishing from cars. A woman in the 1950s, reported by farmers, her eyes empty, her presence fleeting. Was it all Anna? Or was Route 17 something more? A road that claimed its travelers, a place where the lost lingered. He went back to the elderly woman, whose name was Margaret, Anna's mother. She invited him in, her house cluttered with photos of a smiling girl with dark hair. "She never left," Margaret said, her voice heavy. "Not really. She's still out there, looking for a way home." Margaret showed him a locket Anna had worn, a small silver heart with a floral design. Mark's blood ran cold. That scent the floral note in his car was the same. The encounters grew worse. Mark started hearing taps on his car windows, even on clear nights. Sometimes, at home, he'd find wet footprints on his porch, leading nowhere. His daughter, Lily, visited one weekend and mentioned a dream a woman in a pale dress, standing outside her window, whispering, "Take me home." Mark didn't tell her about Anna, but the fear in his chest grew. Was the hitchhiker following him, or was she reaching for Lily too? Mark's life unraveled. He stopped sleeping, his nights filled with the sound of rain that wasn't there, the echo of a soft voice asking for a ride. He'd wake to find his car keys moved, his windows fogged with breath that wasn't his. At work, Tom noticed his shaking hands, his hollow eyes. "You gotta let it go, man," Tom said. "The hollow takes what it wants." But Mark couldn't let go. The road had marked him, and Anna, or whatever she was, had claimed him. He tried driving Route 17 one last time, in daylight, hoping to break the spell. As he passed the spot where he'd seen her, his radio crackled, a voice cutting through the static. "Why didn't you save me?" His heart stopped. The voice was hers, soft but sharp, accusing. He swerved, nearly crashing, and vowed never to take the hollow again. But the stories didn't stop. Other drivers reported the same figure, a woman, soaked, her eyes empty, her presence fleeting. Some said she appeared only to those who carried regrets, those who'd failed someone they loved. Mark thought of Lily, of the divorce, of the nights he hadn't been there for her. Was that why Anna had chosen him? Was she a ghost, or a mirror reflecting his guilt? The road itself seemed cursed. Locals avoided it after dark, sharing tales of accidents, disappearances, and a figure who never aged. Some said the hollow was a tear in the world, a place where the dead and the living brushed too close. Others said Anna wasn't one spirit but many, a chorus of the lost, bound to the road by pain or anger. Whatever she was, she lingered, waiting for someone to stop, to listen, to carry her story a little further. Mark never stopped driving, but he avoided Route 17 after dark. He moved to a new apartment, closer to the city, hoping distance would break the connection. But the tapping followed faint, persistent, always at night. He'd see her in his rearview mirror, a fleeting glimpse of a pale dress, a shadow that vanished when he turned. Lily stopped visiting, saying she felt uneasy in his house, like someone was watching. The vanishing hitchhiker became a part of Mark's life, a ghostly reminder that some roads are more than pavement and curves. They're paths where the past lingers, where regrets take form, where a single act of kindness can bind you to something you can't escape. Anna, or whatever she was, waited on Route 17, her thumb raised, her eyes empty, her story unfinished. And those who stopped for her became part of it. Some spirits don't seek rest, some seek company, and some roads never let you go. So, the next time you're driving alone at night, when the road is empty and the shadows seem to move, think twice before you stop for a stranger. Check your rearview mirror. Listen for the tap on your window, because some hitchhikers aren't looking for a ride, they're looking for you. If this ghost story chilled you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your own creepy encounters in the comments below. Have you ever seen something on a lonely road? Felt a presence in your car? Tell us your paranormal tale. We're listening. And maybe, just maybe, the vanishing hitchhiker is too. Story 3. The phone call at midnight. Some nights, the darkness isn't just outside your window, it creeps in, settling into the corners of your home, turning familiar spaces into places of dread. Have you ever lain awake at midnight? The world silent except for the storm raging outside, and felt a presence that made your skin crawl, a feeling that you're not alone, that something is watching, waiting, whispering just beyond what you can see. Tonight, I'm going to share a chilling ghost story, a true horror tale that will make you second guess every ring of your phone after dark. This is the story of Samantha Reed, a young woman whose quiet life was shattered by a single phone call at midnight. What started as a simple ring in the night turned into a supernatural encounter she could never escape. A paranormal tale of a haunted apartment and a voice that defied explanation. Join me for this creepy phone call story, and by the end, you might find yourself checking your locks, covering your mirrors, and fearing the silence of the night. So dim the lights, grab your headphones, and let's dive into the phone call at midnight, a horror narration that will linger long after the storm passes. Samantha Reed was 28, a graphic designer with a creative mind and a life built on routine. She'd moved to the city 2 years ago, seeking independence after a tough breakup, and found solace in her small apartment on the fifth floor of an old brick building called the Eldridge. The neighborhood was quiet, too quiet, some might say, with narrow streets, lined by aging structures that whispered of forgotten histories. Samantha liked it that way. It gave her space to work late into the night, her laptop glowing in the dim light, her world contained within those walls. But the Eldridge had its quirks. The elevator creaked like an old man's bones. The walls were thin enough to hear neighbors' murmurs, and on stormy nights, the wind howled through the vents like distant cries. Samantha had grown used to it, or so she thought. That particular night in late autumn, a storm rolled in unexpectedly, heavy clouds gathering like a shroud over the city. Rain began to drum against her windows, relentless and rhythmic, rattling the shutters as thunder rumbled in the distance. The air inside grew thick with humidity, and the soft hum of her heater was the only companion in the silence. She just settled into bed, the clock on her nightstand glowing 11:59 p.m., her body heavy with fatigue from a long day. The storm intensified, lightning flashing through the curtains, casting fleeting shadows across her bedroom. Samantha pulled the covers up, trying to ignore the unease the weather stirred in her, a primal fear of the unknown, amplified by being alone. And then, at exactly midnight, the phone rang. The sudden trill cut through the silence like a knife, sharp and intrusive. It wasn't her cell phone, which was charging silently on the dresser, no. It was the old landline in the living room, a relic she'd kept for emergencies. Its ringtone a shrill, outdated bell that echoed through the apartment. Samantha hesitated, a shiver running down her spine. Who would call at this hour? A wrong number? A telemarketer ignoring the time? Or something worse? Her heart quickened as she slipped out of bed, her bare feet cold on the hardwood floor. She padded to the living room, the rain pattering insistently against the glass, and picked up the receiver with trembling hands. Hello? She said, her voice steady but edged with caution. There was a pause, a crackle on the line, and then the voice came soft, trembling, almost impossibly close, as if it were whispering right beside her ear, inside the apartment itself. I'm inside your apartment, it said, the words barely audible, yet laced with a chilling certainty. Samantha's breath caught. The voice was neither male nor female, just a hollow murmur, like wind through a cracked door, carrying a weight that made her skin prickle. She scanned the room, the dim lamp casting long shadows, the locked door, the secure windows, but everything was as it should be. Or was it? The words hung in the air, repeating faintly in her mind. I'm inside your apartment. Samantha's grip tightened on the receiver, her pulse pounding in her ears. Who is this? She demanded, her voice cracking. But the line was silent now, except for a low static hum, like distant breathing. She slammed the phone down, her hands shaking, and backed away, her eyes darting to every corner, every shadow. The apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in, the storm outside amplifying her isolation. She told herself it was a prank, a cruel joke, from a neighbor or a hacker. But the voice had been too close, too intimate, as if it knew her space, her solitude. Samantha moved to the kitchen, flipping on every light, the harsh bulbs banishing the darkness but not the fear. She checked the locks again, the front door bolted, the windows latched tight. No one could have gotten in. Yet the unease lingered, a cold knot in her stomach. The phone rang again, shattering the fragile calm. Samantha froze, staring at the landline from across the room. One ring, two, three, the sound insistent, mocking. She approached slowly, her heart hammering, and picked it up. Hello? She whispered. The voice returned, the same soft tremor. I'm inside your apartment. This time, it was clearer, closer, as if the speaker had moved nearer. Samantha's breath quickened. She spun around, scanning the reflections in the windows, the mirror on the wall, but saw only her own pale face staring back. She tried to call 911, her fingers fumbling on her cell phone, but the signal was gone dead, as if the storm had cut her off from the world. The landline clicked to a dial tone, then silence. Samantha backed into the corner of the living room, sliding down the wall, her knees pulled to her chest. The rain pounded harder, and now she heard other sounds, subtle creaks in the floorboards, like weight shifting in another room. A faint scratching like nails on wood, soft breathing that could have been the wind, or something else. Every instinct screamed to run, to hide. But where? She was alone, and yet not alone. The presence felt real, patient, feeding on her growing terror. The hours stretched into an eternity, the clock ticking slower than it should, the storm unrelenting. Samantha stayed huddled in the corner, her eyes fixed on the phone, willing it not to ring again. But the voice echoed in her head, a shadow whispering from the darkness. She began noticing things, small shifts in the apartment that she couldn't explain. The lamp flickered, though the power was stable. A book on the shelf fell with a thud, as if pushed. The air grew colder, her breath visible in the dim light. Every reflective surface became a potential threat. The mirror in the living room, a large antique she'd inherited from her grandmother, had always been mundane, a simple decoration. But now, it seemed to distort reality, the glass rippling slightly in the storm's flashes. Samantha avoided looking at it at first, but curiosity and fear drew her gaze. It was subtle, a flicker in the corner of her vision, a shadow moving where no shadow should be. She turned sharply, but the room was empty. In the mirror, though, the outline of a figure appeared, a vague shape, humanoid but blurred, standing just behind her reflection. Samantha froze, unable to move, her heart hammering in her chest. The figure didn't approach quickly. It was patient, inching closer step by step, as if savoring her terror. She blinked, and it was nearer. She turned away, and when she looked back, it was almost touching her reflected shoulder. Every nerve screamed, that this was real, that something had entered her home without permission, unseen and unstoppable, a presence that defied the laws of the physical world. She tried to convince herself it was her imagination, the storm playing tricks, her stress from work, her fatigue from sleepless nights. But the cold that enveloped the room was tangible, seeping into her bones like icy fingers. The unmistakable feeling of being watched grew, eyes on her from every angle, from the vents, the cracks in the walls, the darkness under the furniture. Samantha whispered to herself, "It's not real." But the words felt hollow. The presence was clever, teasing her with glimpses, a whisper of her name from the bedroom, a soft breath on her neck when she turned her back, a shadow stretching across the floor, only to collapse when she stared directly at it. Desperate, she grabbed her laptop, trying to connect to Wi-Fi for help. But the signal was gone, the storm or something else isolating her completely. She thought of her neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, an elderly woman down the hall, but the idea of leaving her apartment, even for a moment, filled her with dread. What if the presence followed? What if it was waiting in the hallway? Samantha wrapped herself in a blanket, trembling, her mind racing through possibilities. Was it a ghost, tied to the Eldridge's history? She'd heard rumors the building was old, built in the 1920s, with tales of a tenant who died alone, their calls for help unanswered. Or was it something darker, an entity drawn to her loneliness, feeding on her fear like a parasite? The whispers intensified, now coming from all directions, faint calls of her name. "Samantha, I'm here. I see you." She covered her ears, but the sound was inside her head, inescapable. Objects shifted subtly. A photo frame on the table tilted. A drawer creaked open an inch, revealing nothing but darkness inside. The mirror's figure grew bolder, its outline sharpening. Features almost visible, a pale face, eyes hollow and watching. Samantha screamed, the sound echoing in the empty apartment, but no one came. The presence was patient, waiting for her to panic, to break, reminding her that in the dead of night, fear is the ultimate intruder. As the night dragged on, Samantha felt the apartment come alive around her. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with a rhythm that matched her labored breaths. The floorboards groaned under invisible footsteps, circling her position, never quite approaching, but always close enough to terrify. Objects continued to move, her keys jingled on the hook, as if grabbed by unseen hands. The heater hummed louder, then sputtered, filling the air with a metallic scent like burnt wire. She would later describe the feeling as if the building itself was complicit, its history seeping through the cracks. The Eldridge had secrets. Old newspaper clippings she'd once glanced at mentioned unexplained deaths, tenants who vanished, whispers of a curse from the Prohibition era, when the building housed speakeasies and hidden rooms. Samantha wondered if the presence was one of those lost souls, or something summoned by her own isolation. Each shadow twisted, almost forming human shapes, only to dissolve when she focused. The mirror became a portal, the figure now whispering visibly, its lips moving in sync with the voice in her head. Samantha tried to fight back, reciting prayers from childhood, turning on the TV for noise, but the screen flickered to static, shapes forming in the snow like faces watching. The cold deepened, her fingers numb, her blanket no protection. The presence was teasing, testing, reminding her that she was trapped, that dawn was hours away, that fear could break even the strongest mind. By dawn, the storm passed, the rain fading to a drizzle, the sky lightening to gray. The phone stayed silent, the shadows receded into corners, the mirror reflecting only Samantha's exhausted face. She unlocked the door, stumbled to Mrs. Ellis's apartment, and collapsed, sobbing out the story. The police came, found no signs of intrusion, dismissed it as a hallucination or prank. But Samantha knew better. The presence hadn't left it, lingered in the empty spaces, the air, the very fabric of her home. She never stayed alone after that night, moving in with a friend, then leaving the Eldridge forever. But the memory of the voice whispering from nowhere, close and inescapable, haunted her. The phone call at midnight had opened a door, one that couldn't be fully closed. Some presences don't need an invitation. They find you in the silence, in the storm, and once they whisper your name, they never truly leave. So, the next time your phone rings at midnight, when the storm rages and the shadows deepen, think twice before answering. Check your mirrors, listen to the silence, and ask yourself, who or what is on the other end? Because some calls aren't from this world, and some voices linger forever. If this ghost story sent chills down your spine, hit that like button, subscribe for more true horror stories and paranormal tales, and share your own creepy phone call experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had a supernatural encounter at midnight? Tell us, we're listening.